Greg, are you already on Facebook Live?
Thank you for joining me this morning, everybody. We have a very special episode for you today. I've invited leaders from the music community and the business community to come together and dialogue about systemic racism and oppression in the USA. While we get ready, please enjoy this new release from Spirit Fingers and Judy Jackson entitled Lest We Forget, available today on streaming platforms. The song is dedicated to the memory of George Floyd and the many other African-American citizens whose lives were unjustly taken by the forces that are supposed to serve and protect.
Say lest we forget. Say lest we forget. And in the moments of silence, we began to reflect. Dim the silence. Say lest we forget who we are. And I just wanna feel where your heart is. Feel where your heart is. Be vulnerable to truth. Be vulnerable to change. 'Cause nothing stays the same when your mind is in a frame of growth. Say lest we forget. Say lest we forget. Say lest we forget who we are. And in the moments of silence, we find peace, joy, light, understanding, and a space of finding who it is we really are, but not listen. Don't listen to a word they say. You just up and walk away. Don't listen. Don't listen. Hold on to your pride and faith. You just up and walk away. Don't listen, no. Don't listen. 'Cause there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of information surrounding your decisions, so only you can decide what's wrong and right. Say less, less we forget. Say less we forget. Say less we forget who we are. Say less we forget. Say less we forget. Say less we forget who we are. Say less we forget. Say less we forget.
Hello, everybody. There comes a time when it's important that every media outlet be used to help point towards the necessary social change. As a jazz artist, I've dedicated my life to the studies of Black American music. I've been lucky to be mentored both spiritually and musically by great artists like Robert Irving III and Herbie Hancock. I owe my life's passion and deepest gratitude to the rich history of the people who created and nurtured this art form through incredible systemic oppression and hardship. My show is not political, but this issue extends beyond politics. It is essential that we do everything we can to echo the cry against systemic racism and oppression of the African American people in the US, so we can one day see true change. Today on my show, I'm going to let my voice be in the background, and I'm going to listen as we hear dialogue from people of different generations who've lived through the problems that finally have the world's attention. So I'm going to let people into the Zoom meeting now. I'm pretty sure that's Louis Marks waiting to get in and switching to the guest panel. So now we see everybody, and I will unmute everybody. Unmute all. Hey guys, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
All right.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the Jerome Brown there, that's actually Louis Marks, yeah?
Yeah, my apologies, but we're sharing Zoom accounts over
Great.
here.
All right. I am really, really excited to
Louis.
have all of you guys here with me today. I'm going to give a few introductions. We're live. By the way, we're going to have audience questions. I've got somebody monitoring the different channels that this is on, so we have, if you have questions for the panel, send them. You can put them in the chat, and then I'll get them, and I'll interrupt at a couple points here to ask questions from people. So now, without further ado, I will introduce our panel. We have Sput Seawright, drummer, founder of the band Ghost Note, and also has played with tons of incredible artists that I'm big fans of: Kurt Franklin, Snoop Dogg, Timbaland, Erykah Badu, Herbie Hancock, Marcus Miller, and Snarky Puppy. We have. Why don't you say hello, Sput, so they can see you.
Hello to everybody.
There
I'm
he's
glad
there.
to be here.
There's Sput.
Yeah.
We have Arturo Nunez. Arturo, you there?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. That's Arturo Nunez, former CMO for Latin America for Apple, former vice president of global marketing for Nike Basketball. among many other ventures. Currently, he has a restaurant called Chulita in Venice. Really, really good. I've been there. He is also an advisor for my video series Tiny Room, and he's working on emerging disruptive technologies in the music space. Brilliant guy. We've had amazing conversations. We have Micaiah McCraven. Micaiah, you here?
Yo.
This is Micaiah McCraven, everybody. One of my best friends, longtime collaborator Micaiah is not from Chicago, but he's lived in Chicago for as long as I've been on the scene in Chicago, from when I got back from college, maybe 14 years ago or something. And we've been collaborators since then. And Micaiah's had incredible success in the jazz world over the past 5 or 6 years, and shining a ray of light for creative music. We have Deshaun Jones, sax player from Detroit, also one of my best friends. Deshaun?
What's up?
This is Deshaun Jones. Thank you so much for being here. Incredible saxophone player. We've done many recordings together as well. Sorry, I have to get everybody to say something so the camera actually goes to you, because I'm not controlling who it's showing. Otherwise it shows like the previous person. We have Louis Marks, the president and CEO of Rope-A-Dope Records.
Hello.
Also a good friend of mine, and Louis and I have shared countless conversations on not only this topic, but many other issues that are very relevant in the world right now. We have Michael League, bassist, founder of Snarky Puppy and Bocante. Michael, you there?
Hey, everybody.
This is Michael League, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We have Nicole Sweeney, a host at WBGO, brilliant radio personality. Nicole, hello.
Hey, everyone.
And we have Mike Bindraban, founder of Good Music Company and also a human rights law professor. Mike, you there? Give me a little. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, Mike. I tried. Here, let me see. There you are. Cool.
Holland.
Yeah, there's Mike. So yeah, Mike is a human rights law professor for 9 years now. He wrote a book on constitutional law and has been very privy to and studious of everything that's going on in the U.S. And has been going on in the U.S. So thank you guys so much for being here on this panel. This is one of the topics that is in all of our faces right now, but has been in many people's faces since the day they were born, which is why it's so important that we use this opportunity to shine a light on the issues and talk about what the future could look like moving forward. So I'm going to open up the floor to begin. If anybody has any prevalent thoughts on specifically the recent events that they're very anxious to share, because there may be some of them. All right, guys.
I'll go first. Ladies first. I think as many of us know that the recent events aren't anything new, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. I think, and I was talking to my mom about it, what made this so, I think what made this to really wake people up was the hands in the pocket of the police officer. You put your hands in your pocket when you're chewing gum and you're talking to your friend, right? You put your hands in your pocket when you're just browsing around. But to have your hands in your pockets as you're taking another human being's life, I think was something that struck a lot of people in a way that these incidents have never struck us before. Unfortunately, let's be honest, I think it's unfortunate that it took this incident, but people are hurting. Unfortunately, this is something that too many of us see too often. And now is the time to have the most realist and honest conversations from both sides. So I'm glad that you're doing this, Greg, because it's necessary. And then, for us to be involved in music that speaks for the voiceless, that speaks for the people, we got a lot of work to do. And I feel even as an announcer that I have a lot of responsibility going forward in a different way on how I present this music to our audience at WBGO.
Thank you, Nicole. So one of the reasons that I have brought this specific panel together to discuss this specific topic is because every single person here has seen this, has seen systemic racism and oppression in the U.S. firsthand, and I think sharing stories about it is one of the most powerful things we can do when it has the world's spotlight. There are, Nicole, you speak to the idea that there are multiple sides, and there are multiple sides, but there are some things that we can all agree upon if we know the experiences that people have gone through. Arturo, I wanna give you the floor for a second, because you have seen this. I want to discuss the why a little bit. Like, we'll get into the current, exactly what's going on right now and how people are reacting and how people are pushing for change. And I want people's thoughts on that. But first, let's get into that with the why. Arturo, you've had experiences working for major companies in very high positions, and you've seen some of these dichotomies firsthand. Would you tell us a little bit of your story?
Yeah, but before I do that, so first of all, thank you for having this, right? I think it's really important to get people's voices out. So thank you for having it, and thank you for having me. Nicole mentioned something really interesting. She said, that people are really reacting to this George Floyd situation. And they're reacting globally to it, right? I think the horror of what happened to him was so visceral for people, Mm-hmm. I have a friend of mine who's one of my dearest friends. We've been friends for over 40 years. And he's a police officer. And we've had many, many, many arguments and conversations about a lot of these types of issues, right? Which unfortunately happen again and again and again and time again. And he just hit me the other day. He said, man, I totally get it now. I get it. This one did it for me. I totally get it, And I was relieved, right? Because we've been arguing for years about this stuff. But I went to bed that night. I went to bed a little bit uneasy, and I woke up in the morning and I called him and I said, hey man, tell me what it was about George Floyd that did it for you. Why do you said you get it now. I want to understand why you get it, And he said, I was depraved indifference to life, And I said, really? He said, yeah, that's what really got me. I could care less. I said, why wasn't it Walter Scott that got you? He got shot 8 times in the back and then a taser dropped on him. Why did Tamir Rice get you? Tamir Rice was 12 years old in a park. They rolled up on him. They didn't take 2 seconds to figure out what he was doing, shot him dead on the spot. Why wasn't it Crawford guy in the Walmart playing with a item sold at Walmart, in a Walmart that sells actual guns and actual ammo? Why didn't that get to you, I found it hard to understand, and I love anything that will galvanize the people is amazing, But I struggle with that because we've seen this time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, and it's always egregious to us. I always picture my son in the scenario. I have a 17-year-old son. I always picture my son in the scenario. It's always egregious to us, but the world seems to overlook it and keep moving. Maybe this is the time where we're not going to keep moving. Maybe this is the time when people really believe that a change needs to be made. I'm a little bit cynical. I got to be honest with you. I've seen protests before. I'm a little bit cynical, but maybe this is the time when something's really going to change, because at the end of the day, I think that George Floyd is a drop that made the bucket spill over. I think that being Black in America is like Chinese water torture. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what I think it's like. And maybe this is one too many.
Yeah, I mean, when George Floyd was murdered, I was first so numb to it, actually. I was just like, oh, this is the world that I expect to live in. This is the world that I was taught to live in. And I always move accordingly. If I see police follow me, I'm afraid, And so my wall has always been like, okay, that happens. What feels different is this response, though. Is that so many people are outraged, and and in a way that is kind of awakens me as well. Because otherwise it's it's easy to just be like accept it as your reality, that I've been taught to how to act since I was 4 years old. So as soon as you have the comprehension, my father taught me what to do, what to say, how to act, so I don't know what's going to happen. I do think one of the things that is particularly unique in this moment is that we are in this global pandemic, and everybody's just sitting here watching. That's what I think one of the things that made this feel like such a public lynching, because we have nothing else to do but stare at our screens and think about ourselves and think about the world, and so first the outrage is around George Floyd, and then all of the Black lives that have lost. But then I feel like it's also galvanizing just the collective anger of the moment. People are mad, people are broke, people don't have jobs, outside of just caring for Black lives, and that's, both shines a light and becomes other issues as well that can take away from certain messaging. But I think, there is a collective anger and fear for the future and a referendum on the leadership that we have right now. That's why I think it's spreading so globally and so widely. And, in a lot of ways, it's a frightening time and an inspiring time, a time for that, we can have these conversations and quite frankly, anybody who wants change, so many people are afraid of walking through that pain and the turmoil that change requires, and that's I feel like, that's our fate at the moment, if we do want to see things progress, then we will have to kind of face that pain.
I definitely agree with you, Mac, on the painful part of the progression. And I think it's really important to take into consideration that what may be a wake-up call for a lot of people in America is most definitely more of the same for some of us. Like for me, this is nothing new. Probably for you, Mac, this might be nothing new. But, and anybody else who might be watching this, like we've seen police brutality or discriminatory practices implemented against us for generations. So I think the challenge is not to decry the crime or the violence or the mistreatment, but it's really about talking about what are we going to do and what is going to happen as a form of accountability, because people can get, charged. They can go to trial, and then like you got people like Zimmerman walking free. I have a problem with that. I have a huge issue with the messaging that sends to my children and to me and to the people that have died for this cause. This notion of justice, to me, is a farce. It's something that is a false construct disseminated to literally appease and alleviate and soothe the masses so that they don't get upset about the fact that yet another Black boy, another Black man, another Black woman is killed in cold blood. Like we're talking about, domestic terrorism in a real way. Domestic terrorism. They'll never categorize it that way, but that's what it is. But because the terrorists are attacking a marginalized people, it doesn't hit as close to home. And I see a lot of conversation about, oh, this is an American issue, this is an American problem. And I call BS. It's not an American issue. This is a global issue. This is a global problem. The way that they treated African Americans or Africans in China at the height of the outbreak of the virus, oh, you can't come in this store. Like that's systemic oppression and systemic racism. Now, what do they have against us? I don't know. I can't speak to that. But what I'm saying is that melanated peoples across the world are discriminated against in similar fashion. So when you talk about progress, you're really talking about a systemic overhaul on a global level, not a national level. And I think when you try to undo the social conditioning that has indoctrinated generations, like we're talking about centuries worth of practice. You understand what I'm saying? That's been implemented. It's like to undo that would be like trying to pull all four, wisdom teeth at the same time with no painkillers. Who's gonna willfully sit back and let a dentist operate on them like that? So, in my opinion, if change is going to come in a real way, in a tangible way, in an actionable way, it has to be taken by force. And that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing people act forcefully because our lives and our civil liberties are being infringed upon forcefully. And I've never seen any war won without, the loss of life. I've just never seen it. I've never seen any revolution happen without bloodshed. And I hate to say that. I know that we're, musicians and all that, but man, no police officer is gonna look at me and be like, hey, aren't you that saxophonist? They don't care. They don't care about that. They don't care about what we do, or if you're the VP of a major company, they don't care. They don't care where you live. They don't care about your pedigree. None of that stuff. The second layer is economic. We know this, but we gotta assume more control over our dollars. That's a solution. That's a legitimate solution. And galvanize our financial power to the point of a penalty. Like, if you treat my people a certain way, why should I continue to spend my money with you? Why should I finance your oppression against me? It doesn't make sense. So, I could go on and on about it, but I'll say this. If this is the beginning of a new day, I can tell you it's going to be a long process. And it's going to be a very painful process. And it's going to be a very inconvenient process for a lot of people. And that inconvenience does play out in the music. It does play out in art. It does play out in culture. And, a lot of people might not be able to handle that. So it all remains to be seen, Now,
Deshaun, you're talking about, so you and I have spoken about this personally also, the idea of how, we're getting a little bit into so we've got the why, but now you're talking a little bit about the how, and when we've seen...
Oh, it's time for action. Oh, yeah.
We've seen protests, we've seen peaceful protests, we have seen looting and rioting as well, and I know, Sput, you've spoken to this on your Facebook a little bit. I'd like to get your thoughts on the how, what is going on right now, and what effect it is having and could potentially have for the future.
Well, first of all, thank you again for doing this, man. I agree with Arturo. What he was saying was, and Makai too. I thank you for saying the word murder when we witnessed this murder, because I think sometimes what bothers me the most is the uncomfortableness and the awkwardness that everybody is having just to have a conversation. And I think, and I'm gonna try to articulate this in a way that's really from my heart, not my emotion, the emotion side. But yeah, I think it's important for everybody to understand that when you say you have to say that this was a murder. First of all, we have to say that happened, and you have to use that word. And we can't sugarcoat that. We can't say that in the hands of police custody. We can't do that. And because for me personally, and Deshaun's alluded to it, I have kids. I remember when I was a kid, it was a big deal for me to even meet a policeman. It was a big deal. I wanted to take pictures with him. Hey, Mr. Officer. Hey, it was at the fair we would see them. It was a different day. And as a kid, I would honestly say I didn't know about whatever brutality was going on at the time. I didn't know about that. I learned about these things when I started growing up. I think the first incident for me, and I started looking back, was the Rodney King incident. But the thing is, to fast forward to now, have I'm 4 kids in the house with me now. They don't see policemen the way I saw them when I grew up. They are terrified. These are murderers. These are the devils. You know, the devil. These people are evil to my kids. So the thought of me leaving my house terrifies them alone. You know, the thought of me leaving my house alone terrifies them. I mean, they hear that we have an alarm, so when I go to hit the door, the alarm sounds. Everybody's jumping up. Where you going? Where you going? You know, where you going, Dad? Are you know, I'm going to the store. You know, and they came in my room the other night, and my daughter's, look, the people ask me, what happens if you get stopped by the police? And I'm looking at my son. He comes in, and he's, when he gets nervous, he gets fidgety. And he's trying to articulate. He's nervous though. So his arms, he can't even control his limbs. He's 11 years old, right? He can't control his body movement. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, if this is the police, he'd be dead right now. So I'm now trying to teach him the things, the way, the posture that I assume you should have to be around policemen. So saying all of that and bringing it back to, where I am now, I think this hit different. Number one, because of the hands in the pocket. Because you can go all kind of places with that. Malcolm X, you can go all kind of places with that symbolism there. But for me, it's him looking into the cameras. You can see his eyes looking into the camera. He didn't say a mumbling word. And every time he looked into the camera, he motioned down and dug in a little harder. And this happened even 3 minutes after. It's kind of terrifying to even talk about it. But I think that is where this could never be denied or excused away from white America or white people all over the place, because there's always been an excuse before now. We were doing something, he was doing something, his criminal records come up, he was doing, we thought it was a gun, we thought it was this, blah, blah, so self-defense, it's always excused away, So this time, I think the reason why it hits hard, because even if you're white, you can't deny and you can't explain or excuse that away, right? And so I think what's beautiful, and at the same time, is the fact that now that, which is horrible, that this is the reason, but it's having us dialogue. Because I have friends I've had white friends for years. But now for the first time, we're talking about that, like in depth, and talking about not just that, the sense of it. We're talking about the perspective of a privileged person, the perspective, how you don't understand. I have white friends tell me that they didn't realize the privilege, or they know that there's privilege there, but they didn't realize the way that they walked in it amongst us. And that conversation alone is what's different to me. And so now you see white people standing in front of the protest, in between police officers, and then you see nothing happening, which right there is a symbol of power in a sense. And because I'm to the point, we've said enough. We've said enough, we've done enough. My great grandfather has pictures of him in a protest from the 20s, right? My grandparents was protesting in the 1940s. I don't know if there's pictures, but my family talk about it. My parents was in the Civil Rights Act protests in the 60s. We did the Rodney King, now my kids are here. There's so many generations of this, right? So we can't, there's nothing else for us to say or do, because, you know, in my position, there's nothing else. So seeing the insurgence of white people stepping up and not just talking for us, but not talking with us, not for us, talking with us, but talking to their counterparts, talking to their neighbors and checking their neighbors is what's different here for me. I can talk all day, but I don't want to.
How do you start a dialogue with your kids, or Micaiah, or
You know, I wanted to address that real quick because Spud talked about the kids and Deshaun talked about the kids. I have two kids. I have a 17-year-old son and I have an 11-year-old daughter. And I've been struggling about how to talk with them. So I actually wrote a letter to my son. And when I wrote that letter, I was trying to give him some rules that might assure his safety in our society. And I kind of called it like, you know, the talk 2.0 or 3.0. And those of you who know what the talk is, right? About how to handle police circumstances, etc. You know, man, and the more I kept writing, the more I couldn't come up with situations where he would actually be safe. like, yo, don't sit in your house and eat ice cream while you're watching the game. A black man died doing that the other day. A black man died eating ice cream in his apartment watching the game the other day.
Because it was assumed it was assumed he was.
What rules can I give him? What rules can I give him?
There is no rules, man.
It's unbelievable.
They only present rules for us to abide by so that they can manipulate it to the point of our oppression. And that's always been the case. How's it you can go from the big house to the plantation to the big house in the penitentiary? It's the same system, different generation, different name, but same function. It is not designed for us to have a way out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
people say the system is broken. People say the system is broken. I would argue that the system is working exactly the way it was designed to work, and for whom it was designed to work. You know, Spud talked about years and years and years of his family protesting. You know, I haven't heard more people quote MLK in the last week that I've ever heard. Right, but the interesting thing is, man, MLK was, he was a ordained minister. He was articulate. He was passionate. He was a spokesperson for the people. He was well dressed. He was peaceful. He was nonviolent. He was beaten, jailed, and murdered.
Yeah.
He was 1967. They did a poll. The most hated man in America was MLK.
Yeah, I mean, he also came to a point in at the end of his life where he questioned whether peaceful protest was even the way to go, and he actually saw eye to eye with Malcolm X more in the end of his life. So,
well, the challenge with the Malcolm versus MLK disposition is a lot of people do champion the civil rights movement, the Civil Rights Act is something that was positive for our culture and for our people. Except that when you peel back the layers on that thing, you actually find that it's all the more nefarious and all the more to our detriment, and on so many different levels. And that's a conversation that's hard to have even amongst ourselves, let alone with people that are not in the community and that are not aware of the negative impacts of a deal like that. Now, to your point, but Dr. King did speak directly to that in an interview, and I think it was about 67, like 11 months right before he passed away. And he basically said that it cost America nothing to integrate with African Americans. It cost nothing. If anything, they benefited from it. And we're talking about financially, economically, which is truly the driver for all the decisions. I mean, no major company is going to decry violence, murder, racism, anything like that, unless it's going to affect their bottom line. Period.
But they just announced charges against all 4 officers.
Oh, wow. They did it today?
Right now. Right now. Right
now. Took them a while, but because I know you can get pulled over with a suspended license and be thrown in jail quicker than these people. You know what I'm saying?
And you also, for black people, you're guilty to proving innocent. You know,
Oh, no doubt. You gotta.
like
you
I mean,
threat.
yeah, you're guilty to proven innocent. You picked up, and you held, and if it's an accusation that's pretty high on the mark, you already get that label. You already get a felony. You already get that, and the bonds are really high. They're set really high. So I don't know. I mean,
that's what the talk is about. You know, you get pulled over and you have to prove your cultural capital. You know, I speak well. I'm not like what you think. You know, it's some sort of performance. You know, that's why we can code switch.
A cakewalk.
I was driving in my vehicle, Micaiah. I was driving in my vehicle one night with a white colleague of mine, a woman sitting in the passenger seat, and I got lit up on 8th Street here in Miami. I live in Miami. And I immediately pulled over, turned on the dome light in my car, I lowered all my windows, I turned off my radio, I put my hands on the steering wheel. Flashlight came through the window. Sir, can I have your license and registration? I said, officer, my license is in my back pocket, registration is in the glove box. Can I grab that for you? He said, yeah. I gave him the information, whatever. At the end of the day, I think he gave me a warning or whatever. The lady next to me said, what are you doing? You don't have to do any of that. I said, no, honey, you don't have to do any of that. I'm trying to make it home.
Right.
You don't have to do it. I got to do that stuff.
I got my stuff out before they get to the window.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I'm scared to do that.
And I'm like, you know, I'll say what I to say. You know,
Crazy. My dad is in his 70s, has worked hard all his life. He's probably never stolen a pack of gum, but he's worked hard and he likes luxury cars. My dad gets pulled over and asked, where is he going? Where is he coming from? All kinds of questions that aren't warranted because he has a nice car. And it happens to him all the time in different states. So this is a reality. It's our everyday. As everyone is
being group one, the amount we travel, you know, being group one, sit in first class. You know what I'm saying? Especially as a younger guy. You know what I mean? Oh, excuse me. You don't.
Yeah.
Let me sit.
I think you're in the wrong seat.
I'm sitting in my first class seat on an airplane. The stewardess walks over. By the way, I could do this literally for days.
Yeah.
I could story tell about this for days.
Oh man.
I'm sitting in 4A. Stewardess comes over. Excuse me, sir. Is that your seat? I said,
oh yeah.
Why, yes it is. She's like, well, can I see your boarding pass? And I said, why, are you checking boarding passes? She said, yes, I'm checking boarding passes. I was like, cool. Start at 1A. When you get here, I'll show you my boarding pass. Oh, I'm just trying to do your job. Oh. No, listen, you're not trying to do your job. You're not just trying to do your job. You know how I know that? Because I'm an executive platinum passenger on your airline and I fly every week. And I know you're not trying to do your job. What you're doing is you're profiling me. And now you want to make it look like I have a chip on my shoulder because I won't show you my boarding pass when you're not trying to do your job. You're just fucking with me. That's what you're doing.
Well, because you're not being subservient enough. You know, who are you to rival me? Who are you to challenge me? You know, in a societal, you know, sort of construct where we are always going to be looked at as a slave class. I don't care how you color it, how you put it. Black people in this country and really throughout the world are always going to be looked at as lesser than. The issue I have is the crying. The problem is I'm kind of tired of talking about that. Kind of like what Spud's saying. I want to figure out what we can do about it. You know what I'm saying? What are some actionable consequences that we can deal with for the people that perpetrate all manner of, I can't even find the words to describe it.
Let me put something out there for a second.
Being discriminated against, to being shot like a dog in the middle of the streets, to it being televised.
Don't say like a dog. Don't say like a dog, because if you shoot your dog, you're going to jail. Go outside and shoot your neighbor's dog, see if you don't go to jail. Don't say like a dog. We get treated worse than dogs. Not like a dog.
That's a whole nother layer of conversation.
Another level. Hold on.
Real issue
but let me put something out there. Because a lot of people have asked me for answers. A lot of people have asked me what the answers are. And I get it. I get the spirit of that. The spirit of that is collective engagement around answers. I get it, right? But yo, man, would you walk into a battered women's shelter, sit down a group of women and be like, okay, what are we going to do about domestic violence, ladies? This is out of hand. Wouldn't you be in the wrong place to have that conversation?
I mean, I get the analogy.
Without having men in the room with no men involved? Well, I got an idea. How about the men stop beating us? How about that?
I mean, it makes too much sense. It's too much like right for it to go down like that. But my issue is not even about me. It's not about you. It's not about Mac or Sweater, anybody else that's dealing with this. It's about the messaging that is being sent to our generations. I got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 1-year-old. The one I'm most concerned about right now is my 1-year-old, okay? Because I'm accountable for him and for his life I'm accountable for the rest of his days, but when he's 15, that means 14 years from now, who's to say that he won't still have a target on his back like we do? When he's 21, and you gotta think about it, when you're 21, 22, you're really just starting out in life. You make a lot of mistakes in your 20s, you understand? Is the world going to be reformed so much inside of 19 years, 20 years from now, that things will actually get better and my youngest son doesn't have to worry about the shit that we got to deal with? I'm of the mindset that it's not going to change unless something radical occurs in society that forces the hand of change. Because the shit's not going to be conceded willfully. We've done this already. We've hid behind music. Okay, Billie Holiday had Strange Fruit. Come on. Now that they'll do all these different things to kind of pacify people into thinking that we're moving towards change. But in reality, the experience has been consistent. Almost like just consistent. It may have gotten worse over time. Some people will assume that racism went away. Like they said, well, we had a black president, we had Obama. Come on, man. Come on. Y'all, for the people that say that, I say, well, did you see how they treated Obama while he was president? You see all the shit he had to deal with as a president. You see what his second term was like. Like, did we really pay attention to that?
Nope.
The fact that oftentimes they wouldn't even refer to him as president. They would call him Obama, or they call him some other name. It was so disrespectful. So I think that a large
put up during the State of the Union address and said, "Liar!" Remember that?
I do.
Obama was speaking.
Yeah.
How many lies have been told since then?
If the president of the free world, the leader of the free world, can be discriminated against, how much more is it going to apply to any one of us? How much is that going to apply to our children? So I'm most concerned about our future, man. I think that the things that happen today and the things that happen moving forward, it can't be about us. It can't be about what happened before us. It's strictly about constructing a tangible future and pathway for our generations so that they don't have to keep dealing with this shit, man. Because I fear for my life, and I fear for your life, and I fear for our children's life every single day. Like, it's not even something that I'm like conscious of. I have a very protective disposition in my mind about how I need to go about life. The routes, maybe I drive a certain route in the city because I know that there's a stronger police presence in a certain area, and I just don't want to be fucked with. I just want to go about my business. So I'm gonna go a different way. Like, I shouldn't have to do it. I shouldn't have to do like that. I'm not a criminal, man. We're not criminals. We're not the enemy. And we shouldn't be demonized for our response. And I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot. So you mean to tell me that we can be transgressed against, and then like the caliber of our response, if we meet the actual crime, the murder, right? If we meet the same level of aggression, then we're demonized for it. It's like we're definitely set up to fail.
Well, or if you
both ways, you can't violate me and then dictate how I'm going to respond to you violating me.
Right. And initially, that's what you saw happening. Especially, at least I saw a lot of that on social media. We shouldn't be rioting, and we shouldn't do this, and it's about peace. Like, nah, fuck that. No, you have killed my brother's blood is in the streets. That's an act of war.
Ironically, we're trying to protest, and the officers who killed that man, right? The officer that literally put his knee on his neck and killed that man was free until the 3rd precinct burned. Oh, so you understand burning? Apparently, you understand burning. You didn't understand protest. You didn't understand Kaepernick. I didn't understand that. Why is he taking a knee? I'm outraged. But when the precinct burned, all of a sudden, you put charges on a police officer that killed the man. Okay, I don't know. Maybe we're having a conversation now. I don't know.
Hey, Malcolm X said it best. He's like, if they don't want to clean up their house, then it should catch fire and it should burn down. He said that in 1962 after another police murdered one of us in Los Angeles. Now, if Malcolm X can say it, I don't see why we can't follow suit if the same thing is happening. And that's what's happening. That's why people are responding. Now, to Ma'Khia's point, he brought up something very interesting, which is that there is a co-opting of causes, right? Because a lot of people are upset with the way that the economy is kind of not running right now. People are feeling oppressed and infringed upon. So you have a lot of just angry people. The real reason, in my opinion, that we have seen a response at this level is because everybody's hurting right now. And Brother Floyd, his passing, his murder, and the viewing of it, the imagery of it, and the replay of it. Because it was one thing to see it, but it's another thing when they keep playing in front day after day after day. How many times, you could pull it up right now, right? By seeing that, it provokes people to wrath.
The drop that overspills the bucket, man. We have a group of people in America that for the last year or two have been being told, we are going to build a wall to keep you out of our country. We're going to build a wall to get rid of you and keep you out of our country. And then, during a pandemic, you are essential workers, my friends. Keep picking the strawberries. Are you kidding me? How am I illegal and essential? How am I illegal and essential? You were just building a wall yesterday, but now I'm essential?
Yeah.
With no paper?
Have dogs sending his dogs out on the protesters. Did you see that? We back in the 60s now, where we got dogs and water hoses in 2020. That's the rhetoric.
I saw Mike a couple of times. Benjamin trying to jump in there. I don't want us to.
Oh yeah.
Can go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I do want to hear from Mike and Michael at Lewis also.
No, it's very. It's actually very, very heartbreaking and sad to see the rage and not able to do anything or to say anything, which adds value to or gives some kind of solace or some understanding or whatever. Because for me, I mean, I'm not black. I'm Indian. I'm from Indian descent. I just really feel the rage and the anger, and especially there's hardly anything that you can do. I have a son, and I have my ex-partner is white, and we were talking about this yesterday on the phone about our responsibility actually to our son. To start the discussion on equality and race and social injustice to some extent with him. He's only 6 years old, but he's very smart and he gets it. He saw it on the news, I mean, he sees that there's riots going on in America. He sees that there's demonstrations going on in America. He sees that there's something wrong, and he asks questions. And for me as a father, it's very difficult just to explain it to him, but I can understand from your inner perspective that it's even much tougher. But I do think that the key to actual change, and I don't have the answers, is there to talk to your children and actually engage full on in discussion and dialogue somehow. I don't know how, but I do feel that something's there, and if it comes from Black people talking to their children, white people or from other races, or just people in general talking to their children and making this a subject that is worth talking about, because all your kids, Mac's kids, Deshaun's kids, Spud's kids, Arturo's kids, they're all from a next generation which is significantly different from mine or Michael's or it's different. They're going to experience this different. And I hope, and I really think that we can make a difference. And I'm just curious how you guys deal with that. I mean, Arturo just said that he tried to write his son a letter, and that kind of circled back to him like, man, what can you do, and how do you do it?
Start with the truth. That's my belief. Start with the truth. Yes, kids maybe need some walking through things to deal with fear, but we're quite honest with our kids in this house. And hopefully they'll have the tools, to talk about this stuff and deal with this as they grow up. I don't think we should hide it from them. And, but the same goes from the other side. Kids are taught to be racist from the time they can have this conversation as well. So it needs to be, broader than just how do I talk to my kids, but how does the larger society educate our kids?
Yeah, I think
Louis.
Yeah, guys, sorry, I have to jump in a minute, so thank you for giving me some time. And I just want to say first, thanks to everyone sharing their stories. I just put it in the chat, but it's just like, it's so amazing to hear this, because while I share like the cynicism that Arturo mentioned, especially about even if there is a big bang and a lot of attention and some actual change, then everybody goes back to normal. And that's how we're back here and consistently back here in this situation. So for me, hearing those stories has been part of a lifelong process of unwinding racism that I was taught. And a lot of times I thought it was my own opinion, but as I started peeling back the layers over time and meeting people and learning, it was a gift to be in the music business, because I met more people who told me stories and confided in me. I realized as I peel back the layers that these weren't my ideas in the first place. These were things that I was taught by a dominant culture, and I think the whole thing is economic in purpose and reason. And so after this is finished, whatever gains come from this dramatic moment, that for me is when the real work begins of communicating with people and trying to teach people or help people unwind this process, because it's so deep in the psyche, because it's been going on for so long, and there are people that will not let go of the hands of power unless they lose money. So that's the next step for me, and
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
This is a great starting point for a lot of people, I think. So I'm really kind of speaking to people who might be listening, that look within, because what these cats are saying on here is real. There's no, it's indisputable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Louis, and thank you so much for getting on the panel today. I know you had this other meeting you had to get to. You told me before, so I really appreciate you jumping in for the time that you had.
You got it. I'll see you tomorrow. And thanks, everybody.
Love you, Louis.
I'm going to refrain from giving most opinions on this, because I want to leave the floor to you guys for the most part. But I just want to express one thought that Louis just touched on, which is that the seeds of racist beliefs are very deceptive. We are taught these things from a young age. It's essentially, we're taught to not recognize our white privilege, and the only way that we see it is by being close with and having stories from people that we love who have gone through these things, and so that's why I know that there are all different opinions on the exact path forward of how we get it out of the system, and I want to dialogue about those specifics a little bit. But I want to just say that, for example, in Arturo's... Wait, I'm sorry, Makai, did you have an interruption you wanted to make?
Well, no, go ahead.
Okay. Arturo's example, it's just... It brought to mind, obviously, when I'm flying and I'm touring, that's never happened to me. I've never been asked, as the only person in first class, to show me your ticket. And it's probably just as deceptive to that person asking you that they are doing something racist as it is to so many other people who don't quite see it. Because stewardesses, and they've been assholes to me in different scenarios, not letting me get on a plane with my instrument or whatever. But the targeting is something that they can do without even realizing they're doing it, because they're so trained from an early age to just act that way. So okay, Micaiah.
And I'd like to add, and I agree with you, and to what Louis said, is, two things. One is the accountability, this idea that either you are racist or you're not, or you do something racist or you don't. I think, there's a lot of talk about allyship, and I think, one thing that it's refreshing to hear is when people admit that they have had racist ideas, or that they, I think it's important, because people are so afraid of being called a racist that they don't even take accountability for things that they've done, or they might be embarrassed about, or they might not speak to other people when they hear things, or they see things with their own eyes and they'd rather not deal because they don't have to. That is distinctly privilege, and so that is something I do. I see a lot of statements of support, right now, because it's the thing to do. But, I also want to ask people to have some accountability, and ownership of when they might have fucked up, or they didn't speak up.
People need to have honest conversations amongst themselves, and it's, as I think Sean said, it's not on us anymore. It is on non-Black people, white people. It's on them to have honest conversations amongst themselves, honestly, about racism, about how they feel about Black people. Sit down with your family members. You all know you got a cousin that makes an off-colored comment here and there. You got an uncle. It might even be foreign, but it starts within. It starts young, and privileged people don't even realize what they're doing. It's time for people to recognize their privilege and talk about it.
That's hard.
Be upset about being called a racist. You need to be upset about the racism. And too many people are more upset about being called racist as opposed to being angry about the actual racism that's going on. And that's got to change. That has to change.
I've seen a change in the tone as a consequence of the Me Too movement, right? A lot of conversations that were okay for dudes to have, even with each other, are now unacceptable conversations. Like, dudes will actually look at you like, oh, you're that guy? Like, we're not doing that no more. And that's not, by no means is it over. There's a lot of work to be done on that front. But I think that just the movement itself has changed the way that people talk about that kind of stuff. And I think the same thing can happen here, just by somebody saying like, my niece is not gonna have me talking that shit at Thanksgiving. So I better, you know what I mean? Because I'll get stepped to. That's gonna change the way that people act,
I wanna share a story, man. I think that I think I said it earlier, like one of the things that I've experienced, I've been talking to all my white brothers and sisters like every day. Like I'll be okay going a day without having these conversations, to be honest with you. But I think the one thing I've learned, and one thing I've been understanding through dialogue, is how important dialogue is. I mean, like what Louis said is very important. I have a lot of brothers that they just don't, their position is, I'm not with that. That's not who I am. But they still don't, because of that, and they hang out with us, and they do music with us, and they work with us at a very close level, but they still don't recognize their power in privilege. And so, prime example, I'm on the road with my band. I have a band called Ghost Note, and we're on tour, and we're driving in this moment. Not right now, obviously, but we're driving. I'm the driver, and I'm looking at the GPS, and I think we made a wrong turn, so I got off the road real quick and was gonna make an exit and then make a U-turn or something like that, and I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't I turned my blinkers on, got off. Only thing that was, man, I looked behind me and saw that no one was behind me. Half a mile back was a cop car, police car, and obviously they pulled off, they pulled behind us, and we pulled up. I immediately pulled over, and I'm like, oh shit, like what did I do? Because everybody I didn't do anything. Oh, so my band is multicultural. The guitar player is white. My co-founder of the band is white. He was in the back asleep, and the guitar player is sitting in the passenger seat. I do exactly what Arturo said. Put your hands, because that's what we do. Our hands are gonna be seen. That was the first mandate for the community, is to put your hands on the steering wheel. And the dude is asking me, he comes out, he taps on the window. I tell Peter, my hand is here, I'll tell Peter to let the window down for this guy. He lets the window down because I don't want any movement from my standpoint, right? Is that overkill? Did I do too much? Was I going above and beyond? I don't know, but I'm alive. But the bottom line is,
yeah. Did you make it home?
Yeah. So, but check this out. He asked me for my license. Immediately, Peter reaches in his pocket and gives him his license. And they start having dialogue. And it's like I wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
We started having dialogue, and it's like I wasn't there. I'm just sitting here watching Peter and this cop having dialogue, and I'm baffled. He's asking Peter all the information. Where you guys headed? Where you going? But it was like he pulled Peter over, and but at the end of this call, jokes were cracking. At the end of the stop, jokes were cracking. Peter went in the back of the trailer, gave the man a CD, and told him to go listen to us. He let us go, and we drive off. Now, here's the amazing thing about this. I don't think Peter realized the privilege, the power of that specific privilege. Like, it went from me having my hand on the wheel to the cop not even acknowledging me anymore, just because he was there. Now, if he wasn't there, I don't know if this would be the same outcome. I don't know if he would have cared that we was musicians. I don't know if he'd looked in and saw that the whole band was black. I don't think this would have been the same outcome. But it was important for me to let my guys know how significant that was.
Exactly.
I want to point something out here, and sorry to interrupt again. I know I said I wouldn't, but this is the thing that. And I have all sorts of friends, and I have dialogues with so many different types of people. That type of experience is the thing that some people don't know happens. They don't understand because they haven't had the dialogues or taken the time to listen to people who have had those experiences, and it's never happened to them. And that's.
I mean, we got so many stories.
Yeah.
Right.
So many stories.
Too many stories. Too many.
I've got stories for days. Cop ask you why pulled over in Ohio. Why you scared? Why do you look nervous? You have a gun? Next thing you know, I'm in the back of the cruiser. They got dogs, searched the whole car. Going through my merch. Like, I got a CD with my face on it. Telling them I'm a musician. Really? Where's your band? I'm meeting them at the gig.
Where's your instrument?
Where's your instrument? They got backline. What's backline?
All these validators.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you, like, what am I, there's nothing I'm making. It's like I'm making it all up.
No, you can't. Nah.
We had a meeting.
I will say the advent of where we are today, from a socio-political standpoint in America, has made it so things are a little bit more transparent. People are seeing more of this behavior, whether it's the Karen syndrome or whatever. But to us, we've been going through this, and I've been telling people what we're going through, and they go, "No, that didn't really happen to you. Come on, are you serious?" And so now, when they see it, They hit me and they go, "Yo, that's crazy," and I'm like, "No, it's not. I've been telling you about what it's like to walk around in my skin. I've been telling you."
I got white people calling me like, "Hey, are you okay?" You know, I'm like, I've been through it. I've been through this. You know.
We had a meeting today at the station to discuss how we, as a radio station that plays jazz music, how do we address these issues. One of the things I said, which is interesting that you just said, Makai, is that a lot of our audiences go to your shows and they go home. Forgive my co-host in the background. But a lot of you musicians go to your gig and you come home and that's all the audience sees. I said, what you don't know is that these guys actually have to think about getting to the gig safe and alive and getting home from the gig safe and alive. Like, this is your reality, and we need to start maybe telling those stories, talking to you all as musicians.
Have we seen, y'all seen them evict Charles Mingus?
They know this stuff.
Y'all see them evict Charles Mingus out of his home? The police? You know? You see the videos of them evicting Charles Mingus out of his home?
No.
It was all.
So you think people know that?
I have been asked so many times.
You gotta stop creating excuses for oppression, man. Like, people know when shit is fucked up. People know the difference between right and wrong. People know privilege. And what we're really talking about is this elephant in the room, which is white guilt. If we don't if we don't address the fact that every time something happens that ruffles the feathers of, you know, white social consciousness, that everything is okay and I am not, you know, accountable for the sins of my forefathers, I'm a completely different person. I'm cool. You know, there's a lot of feigning of support and feigning of ignorance for the simple fact that our experience is a direct reflection of their lineage and the history. And it's too painful. It's painful for everybody. But
I'm gonna tell you something really crazy. I'm gonna tell you something really crazy. In 2 seconds, something really crazy. Yo, man, I got so many people asking me yesterday and the day before, was I okay? Well-meaning white friends of mine, and telling me they love me yesterday and the day before, right?
Yeah.
Asking me if I was okay and telling me they love me. That, yo, man, I literally went to the news site to like, yo, did they re-announce slavery or some shit? Like, what happened? Because the shit that's happening is normal in my world, right? They had so many people saying, are you okay? And telling me they love me, that I was like, yo, I missed some monumental shit that's coming down beyond what's happening, because, yo, what's going on right now?
Of the Black experience. Like, you can enjoy and indulge the delicious fruits of Black culture from the confines of a conservatory or a school, but like, you're not really in the place where the culture is cultivating the art. You're not Southside Chicago, you're not Eastside Detroit, you know what I'm saying, or East Cleveland, or like, you're not really in those spaces to really understand the experience, like the daily experience, you know, or just, I mean, Camden, New Jersey, like, take your pick of any particular hood or ghetto or impoverished area, and not just urban, but also rural. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of culture and a lot of information, a lot of experience that informs the art that we produce. You know what I'm saying? I think that people think that because they are co-opting the culture of the music or the visual art or the dance or the clothing or the swag, that's supposed to be, you know, a way of indemnifying them of a very present and dangerous reality that we experience, like weekly, daily, on our, like, if I go out and I'm supposed to go and drive somewhere right now, probably not the best idea for me. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't care how well you can play the changes. I don't care how you dress. Your experience is always going to be different from mine. You can have a conversation with a police officer. You can have direct. I've seen people cuss cops out like, hey, you can't do that. You can't do this. Shit, there ain't no way. I wouldn't.
I'm yelling at him. Don't talk to him like that. What are you doing?
Matter of fact, real talk. Look, the less you say, the better. Just like, shut up. Everybody shut up.
Let me throw something in there. Actually, speaking on what you're talking about right now, I want to ask Michael a question, because Michael has been with me while I experienced racism to the highest degree, where I experienced what the worst thing you can do to a black man. And we've also been outside of a club where he and I witnessed our friend and co-bandmate cuss at a police, and we were like, "What are you doing,
bro? There's no way."
Like, and you know, and I mean, so I like to hear Mike talk about like what that made, what that did for him, and you know, and actually just express it from your standpoint, you know. First of all, talk about my experience first, I guess.
Yeah. I think the thing that split is, you're talking about Germany.
Yeah.
So we played a gig in a very small town called Osnabrück, which is like in the middle of nowhere, and not uncoincidentally in the part of Germany where Hitler got his kind of first base established when he was running as a political candidate. So the effect of history on the present, obviously there's a thing going on there, you know. We were in a bar, and we were doing like a 3-day residency at a music college, and we did our first day of like classes or something, or maybe we hadn't even started.
That was the night before. We had a free night off before.
Okay, we had a free night off. So we're at the bar, and we were hanging out with all these music students who were really juiced to meet everybody. Corey was there, Sput was there. I think on that tour you were the only black members of the band. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
That were on that tour with us.
Yeah, that's true.
And a couple of the kids had a guitar. We were at Langlo at the bar. There was like a jam session or something, but we were kind of hanging out. And one of the kids, you know, like 18 or something, was within earshot of Sput and Corey, and he said like give Corey or give Sput the guitar. Let's see if these N words can play. And the white members of the band were on one end of the bar, and Sput and Corey were closer to the, because we didn't hear it. You heard it, right, Sput? Or was it Corey who heard it?
Oh, no, I definitely heard it.
Okay, so we were on the other end because Sput and Corey were between them and us. What were you going to say, Sput?
No, I said I definitely heard it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the word came over to us, and, you know, Corey said, "I'm going to leave," you know. So he got up and split, I think. I'm very fuzzy because this was many, many years ago, but the thing that I do remember is that there was a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, a lot of members in the band that wanted to punch the kid in the face. And I remember, actually the thing that made the strongest impact on me was the kind of the attitude that you and Corey had, which was really just like, you know, just an exhale of like, this has happened forever and will always happen forever. And that was the thing I think that kind of made the impact on white people in the band, was like, wow, that's the first time we've seen that kind of shit like that, or the 10th time, but not the 1,410th time, you know? So I went over to the kid and I, you know, was trying to not punch him in the face and asked him what he said, and he told me the exact same thing. He was like, I just wanted to see if they wanted to play the guitar. I was like, that's not what you said. And he said, well, yeah, I did. And then I said, I was told that you said this. And he said, yeah. And I was like, do you not see a problem there? And he was like, no, you know? So I took the kid aside and I was like, we're just gonna really walk through this, you know? Do you know what that word means? Blah, 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 blah. And his thing is like, I'm an 18-year-old from Germany that's never met anyone who's not German. The only exposure to black culture I have is on MTV, and this word I hear a lot, and I've heard Eminem say it, I've heard blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, look, I'm gonna explain this to you. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt that you didn't mean this in a harmful way, but I'm gonna let you know that this is something that you should feel terrible about, that you should apologize to everybody involved for, and that you should never make this mistake again, you know? And the kid was fucking, he was, you know, shitting in his pants. From the way he explained it to me, he had no idea. And the next day he went up to Sput and apologized to him about it. And I was like, man, you know, I get it, you know, that you are not a part of American culture and that you might not have that information, but you need that information before you throw stuff around, you know? And that was interesting. Go, what were you gonna say, Splat?
I was gonna say, to interject, I mean, Mike, you know, for time purposes, there's a lot that happened in between that, because we were very upset. We was, you know, he was a part of this workshop, a residency that's supposed to be there, and we told the head that he can't participate. And
that's right.
And so what happened was, he was on the lawn crying and screaming, pleading for forgiveness while we were in these classes. And they came and got me and Corey out, and it was like, please come talk to this guy. And that's where the apology happened, because he was disrupting all of the classes.
With consequence, he's apologizing.
I didn't.
Yeah. So he was disrupting all the classes. So what happened was, and this is what we do all the time, man. We get upset, and we're enraged. Like, bro, fuck you. You just call me that. I'm not talking to you. You know, and so I guess when Mike had the conversation with him and educated, he was like, no, I'm a hip hop fan. He was like, I'm a hip hop fan. And then I'm like, then that's when I learned, I kind of started learning certain things that we're in a whole nother country, number one. And I'm like, do they teach about Black history over here? Like, do they teach about like, cause this dude, he's gonna die if he goes to America and he goes to America and he does this. It's over. Like, he's gonna die, right? And it kind of just, I mean, we was pissed off, and I mean, at that moment, beating his ass wasn't gonna be the way for me, because then now I have to be amongst my brethren who's has to deal with, along with me, this 1 out of 2 Black people in this entire region of the country beating a German's ass in Germany.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
But
here's the thing. He's in a class. He's studying that music. He's studying this music, right? And there's no dialogue about the people who created the music that you're studying. And it's like, you know, to have you have yourself studying this music and being way into it and like investing your time and your being, and then having no clue or reference, or have not spent any time with the people or whether you have access to or not, it seems, you know, extremely negligent at best.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing. It's like there's so many people engaged with the culture, but without engaging with the people or the humanity of the people where the culture resides and has been created. And that's extremely problematic to separate these things until it's like a problem. It's like, oh, I didn't know.
You know.
But you know these songs, you know this music, you know how to play. Like, you know, it brings up a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, but I thought the way Michael the way Michael talked to him is a metaphor of what's happening, or what definitely needs to happen a whole lot more right now here in our country, because like I said, talking to these people on the phone, like for the last 7 to 12 days, it's disheartening to hear the perspective of people who aren't even racist, but don't
by the
see.
Way, had you talked to him, you might have been that weird brother with the chip on his shoulder. Like, what's wrong with him? You know what I mean? The fact that Michael talked to him made him take that conversation in a different way, internalize that in a different way. You know what I'm saying?
But I think
demonized for carrying your pain. You know what I'm saying? You're demonized for responding to the pain that you were literally born into. I think to your point, and I get it. Like I've experienced similar occurrences. Been detained in Hong Kong, been pulled aside in Sydney. You know what I'm saying? Spent some time in Nuremberg. Had similar situations where I'm surrounded by 6 cops, saying that I'm stealing free Wi-Fi from the Yellow Post, whatever that thing is over there. They said I was stealing the Wi-Fi. It's free, it's open. You know what I'm saying? What are you doing here? And if not for me having my blue passport, my American passport, they would have tried to have my ass deported because they think I'm African. They think I'm an African. You feel me? So I've seen that, but the main issue that I have is like, we got to stop giving people passes. It is not okay to be disrespectful on that level and then feign ignorance. You know what I'm saying? Just like if I run through a stoplight and I tell the officer, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, you know, that ignorance is not going to save my ass from being thrown in the back of a police car, thrown in jail, or even being killed. I can't feign ignorance. So I think to your point, Spud, now is not the time to talk anymore. There's nothing more to talk about. You know, if you guys want to have these dialogues, and I'm saying like one to another, I think that's one thing. But in the face of blatant disrespect and then the act of an aggression, there's no discussion because you know what you're doing. That lady in Central Park knew what she was doing.
Right.
She knew what the fuck she was doing. She knew that she was in a position of societal privilege and power, and she knew that she could end that man's life, whether he ends up going to jail for it, right? Or they end up killing his ass. Either way, as long as she doesn't have to.
She had beef with a black Harvard-educated bird nerd. Are you fucking serious?
Go to, man.
Bird nerd.
All I'm saying is that we can talk about the problems all day. The real issue that we're going to be faced with, even after a beautiful discourse such as this, is what are we going to do? What can be done to change it? What can shift the paradigm so that we assume greater power and greater agency over our lives? You know, just be black. What are the pathways to that? Because, you know, talking about, you know, well, this time happened and, you know, the co-opting of culture, this and that, it's still going to continue unless there are consequences or reasonable responses when these things happen. You know, because the biggest point for me is not about us being touring musicians or just being black men. You know, like if you made it to your 30s, now this is a really interesting concept. I feel that since I made it to my 30s, I feel like I've made it. I'm okay with if things don't continue for me, I'm okay with it because at least I didn't get chopped down in my teens, I didn't get chopped down in my 20s. I can't say the same for my sons, for our sons, our children. And that's what I'm most concerned about is the future. Where is this shit really headed? Protesting is not going to do it because there's no laid out agenda. Riots isn't going to do it because there are no true listed demands. I know if it was up to me, my first demand is everybody who has offended or transgressed against my people in a murderous way, give them to me, give them to us, and we'll take care of them. We don't trust your system enough to give out the justice that we deserve because we've seen it. Every day that Zimmerman walks this earth free and breathing is an egregious offense to the entire culture.
You know, when you talked about people willingly knowing that they're doing something wrong, and then acting like they didn't know. You know?
Yeah, feigning ignorance.
Let me ask you a question. How many people were in the car the night that Rodney King got beat?
You talking about in Simi Valley?
Yeah. Anybody know? There were 4 people in the car. The other 3 black men that were in the car were apprehended, handcuffed, and put into police cruisers with no incident. And after they did that, they said, now you, motherfucker, you took us on a chase around the city for 45 minutes. Now you get out of the car. And they beat that man's ass. They knew perfectly well how to apprehend. By the way, police apprehend people every day who are murderers without incident.
And what happened to those cops? What happened to them?
Nothing happened to them.
Well, no, they got charged. They went to trial. And what happened?
Acquitted. 2 of the 4 of them got promotion shortly thereafter. They knew exactly what they were doing. You know, they apprehended Dylan Roof after killing 9 people in a church without incident. They took him to Burger King. They do it every day. They weren't scared. Hold on. The synagogue guy, I'm not gonna remember his name, went to the synagogue and shot a bunch of people. Yo, you mean the police showed up on the scene? There was a guy who had not only killed a bunch of people, but shot at the police. And you weren't scared enough to shoot him? No, we apprehended him without incidents. How?
I'm actually curious to hear from Mike about the legal precedents for actual justice. Like, where is there an example in history of true justice being served in the face of police brutality or the effective and negative effects of systemic racism? Like, where is there even a framework for true justice that's already been established and enacted? Or do we need to just scrap the whole thing and start from scratch? Because
it's a very complex discussion, Deshaun. I mean, if you take Mahatma Gandhi, for example, Mahatma Gandhi became activist after he got beat up in South Africa. When he saw his friend got beat up at a train station, a black friend. After that, he saw the injustice and he became very active, and he saw the same systemic racism in India, what the British did to the Indians, and he started a movement, and a nonviolent movement. And not to say that his movement was purely based on nonviolence, but in that process of India becoming independent, together with Pakistan and Bangladesh, millions and millions of people died. There was a lot of violence.
That's the point I'm making.
If you look at, here in Europe, or just the creation of human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. How did that happen? That happened after the Second World War, after the Allied, the British, the English, the Russians beat the Nazis and the Japanese. And what was needed for that? Violence. Violence was needed for that. It's a French philosopher, Foucault, who says that, to really bring change about, or paradigm change, history has taught us that, it's always, unfortunately, goes hand in hand with a major violent event. I totally disagree with that to some extent. But even in Mandela's South Africa apartheid, hundreds of thousands of people died.
So history is saying a certain thing, right? History is showing.
Well, Michael,
no, it is absolutely not. If you read the Harvard Press's review of mass actions over the last 106 years, from 1900 to 2006, out of 323 mass actions, the overwhelming majority that had success were nonviolent actions. But these actions had a very specific set of things that worked. I'm going to forward the link right now, because this is a huge
definition, though, Mike.
What's that?
No. How do you define that success?
No, Michael. I think you're getting me wrong. I mean, of course, Mahatma Gandhi's and Nelson Mandela's movement were, in the essence, were nonviolent, and their movement was not. I didn't say that there was a lot of violence around it. The separation of India,
okay,
came with millions of deaths. South Africa came with a lot of violence. No, of course, non-violent. Please, no violence. Please be non-violent as much as you can.
How can we be non-violent in the face of violence being perpetrated against us?
The violence already exists. The violence already exists. Let's be clear. This is a response to violence against black people, literally for the color of their skin.
No, I'm not. I totally agree with you guys, and that's not what I'm saying or implying. What I'm saying and implying is that history has taught us, just to answer Deshaun's question, is that, is there an example where a civil rights movement, be it nonviolent, actually, and especially in the face of police brutality, has succeeded? Yes, there are enough. I mean, like I said, India is one of the examples for, if you ask me. But again, it comes with a lot of hardship. It comes with...
The police are no longer violent in India?
Right.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, can I ask...
What I'm saying
is that change in India came about, the independence of India came about after Mahatma Gandhi started a non-violent movement. The British gave India their independence. They made an agreement to get Pakistan and India, and in that agreement, there was like a lot of Hindu people went to India, a lot of Muslims went to Pakistan, and that became one big civil war. And that's
so there's a separation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I want to take the floor for a second, Mike. Could you, League? Could you text me that link, and I will send it out to the chats, because I'm really interested in that document you were talking about. Micaiah, I want to give you the floor for a second, because you and I have had conversations on what systemic change actually would look like, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Man, I've got more questions than I've got answers. To be honest.
Oh, wow,
I mean, first off, I think, there's so many things that I don't see really just happening. But I think a complete restructuring of the concept of police. This whole idea that they're going to, there was, what was it? I forget, a few years ago when the police in New York, they said, we're going to boycott and you're all going to be on your own. Y'all see how bad it's going to be. And crime went down. There was less incident. I I think equity in education, I think the disparity of what's available in resources to people across the spectrum is totally unequal. I think we need more social equity, and I don't know, man.
I think proprietorship should also be a part of that conversation. I think that we as a people need to own more.
I agree. One thing I wanted to say though, is that to this whole idea though, that it's like that economic empowerment is going to be enough on its own. We had a Black Wall Street here in America.
What happened to that Black Wall Street?
It was violently torn down.
Okay, by who?
Were massacred.
Right.
And this is what I'm saying. Economic empowerment on its own is not enough. We have more Black millionaires than we've had ever, and we're still here.
That's a dangerous. Respectfully, that is a dangerous false argument to present, that because an individual achieves, it reflects on the whole of the culture.
No, but what we see is that as individuals do well in the capitalist model, that doesn't reflect on a whole set of standards for the community.
Because there's a free slave, or free man walking the earth, that slavery is not as bad as it really is.
That's what I'm saying. Just because some of us are free doesn't mean the whole of us have power. Everybody must be free for the movement to have power.
Well, Mac, what I'm speaking to is the dispensation of generational wealth and pedigree. And that is something that our people in this country have been robbed of. And anytime we've tried to establish it, it's been cut down at the root. We're talking about, if you want to talk about Black Wall Street, if you want to talk about Black Bottom here in Detroit, if you want to talk about, there's so many different communities and what I call microeconomies that were actually doing well. And imagine if those cultural tensions had carried on to this day. I think that's a major part of it, is that we have a consumer-minded consciousness, but not a proprietor-oriented consciousness. So we're so busy literally financing the very system that oppresses us, And I think that our dollar does matter. I think we spend somewhere between maybe 1.2 or something, maybe 1.4 trillion a year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of buying power. Where is it going? How many times is our dollar circulating within our community? I think there are multiple layers to this problem that have to be addressed. And when you talk about a solution, I think retaining and assuming back our economic power is so important. It's so important. Because nothing speaks to these corporations and these lawmakers more than money. We see that.
Mm-hmm. I just shared with you guys an animation that came to me last night about systemic racism. I think it does a great job of explaining some of the root causes and how it affects Black generational wealth in the country. So when you get a chance, take a look at that. And I also sent you the poem that I mentioned that I wrote to my son, the letter that I wrote to my son. I sent you a visual representation. Take a look when you get a chance.
Yeah, I'm forwarding these to everybody, and Mike League, I think you had something to say. We kind of you were in the middle of something.
I was just going to say that, you know, all these examples that are being given, I think are golden, because it's about talking about why things the way they are. I had a conversation a couple nights ago with a professor of Africology who's from Guyana, who was expelled because he was a political dissident, and he teaches at Temple. And he was basically saying, you know, that everything right now is exactly as you would expect it to be if you wrote it out from the beginning. The police, the problems with the police, if you go back to the root of the origin of the police department, in the North, it was protecting shipping. In the South, they were slave patrols. That's where the first police in the South came from, out of slave patrols. It makes sense. It doesn't, I'm not in any way saying that it's right. I'm just saying if you use history and you follow, I mean, things happen for reasons, right? So all this, throughout this whole discussion, we've been identifying that because of this, because of the destruction of Black Wall Street, because of all of these different things, this is the world that we're living in, you know, because of slavery, because of all this stuff. So it seems to me, you know, as a musician and not a history professor, that solutions, which I love, you know, the fact that Deshauna, you're talking about, like, what are the objectives? What's the agenda? What are the points? What are our ransom demands? You know what I mean, for this thing, you know? What's that?
Oh no, I'm just agreeing with you. Like, yeah.
Okay, you know, like because that's the thing is I actually, you know, I believe that solutions here are going to happen or can happen on like a two-fronted approach. The first front is legislation, right, and like actualized change. Like, we need reparations. That can be achieved. Cross it off the list. We need better police oversight by a commission that's you know, whatever these solutions are. I'm not going to assume to know what those are, but that's one of the fronts. The other front is a mentality shift. People like me, who had parents who really tried to drive into them, like, don't be racist. This is what racism is. I've had the identity my whole life of a non-racist. Over the last few years, and specifically this week, there's been a painful process of realizing that I should always have been doing more, and that actually I have not been playing the role that I thought my identity, like, I haven't been the person that I thought I was, you know? So this is a big thing, and it's already happening. You know, that the thing about conversation, I totally agree. The time for talking is over for many people, but for many other people, white people, the conversation is just beginning. So you all are probably sick of it for good reason. For us, we're not, because this is the first week in my life I've talked with over a dozen white friends about, like, what are we doing wrong? What can we do? You know what I mean? And that's fucking embarrassing. I'm gonna just put that out there. It's depressing and embarrassing that when something like what happened in Germany goes down, I have the conversation with the person, I have 2 conversations with Sput and Corey, and the thing is in my mind put to bed. I'm working on that for me, and a lot of my friends in my community are working on that. I think it's gonna be important. One of the other things that I think is very important about this situation, we were saying why this moment, it's not just because of COVID, because everybody's in their houses, it's because it's the first time that I'm aware of that white people have been actively taking the fight on as something that is also theirs. And I think this is a thing that you can find with historic precedent, that this is a very important thing in that link that I sent. One of the 4 factors of a successful nonviolent revolution is cooperation across social groups, across generations, across genders, across races. So it's a thing that it's like, if you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So the question is, what do we do this time that's different? So we're not doing the same thing and being insane. And I think the alliance, and I don't like necessarily the word ally or alliance because I feel like it feels too passive. But yeah, the cooperation of people across different demographics is a thing that can absolutely turn the tide. It's not going to make America non-racist in one night, but if we're not going to run through the exact same cycle, I think it's an important thing. I think history is our friend, and I think we have to look at the things that have worked just as we look at the things that are broken based on their historical past.
In this country, historically, we haven't seen any real change.
Hey guys, you both talking at the same time. I can't hear.
I just think if there's one thing that COVID has done is to highlight the collective nature of we versus me, right? Because what good is it if you're COVID free in your house, but the delivery that's coming to your house got COVID on it, or the delivery driver does, or your Starbucks guy does, or your food handler does, or your physician does. Now all of a sudden it's we. Now all of a sudden I'm worried about how you're doing because how you're doing can affect me personally. So I think that this coming off the back of COVID has taught like, yo, man, this is a problem. If it's a problem for you, it's a problem for me. And that's what we're seeing in the street right now. It's a problem for you. That makes it a problem for me.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and a lot of what Michael said about the collective nature of it. And, I think, that's why I think power to all people, and if there's an injustice for some, there's injustice for all. Mm-hmm. And I do think that is something, this kind of mindset and this collective coming together of people realizing that the oppressive nature of the state affects all of us, and people need to stand up to that, together. And together, I do think that is where we can actually see change, because it's bred into the history not only of this country but especially in this country. I still find it appalling that if you think of almost nearly every state in this country still carries a Native American name. And they still want to say that the racism doesn't exist. And so, one thing I see it very, like you look at a lot of these protests and they're overwhelmingly white. There's a lot of white people. And I think it's shocking in some ways to not only see, black people getting their heads beaten in with batons or sprayed with hoses, but seeing, white kids getting shot with tear gas and rubber bullets. And I think that does have it changes the narrative a lot, and it affects people to see that when that's not something we're as accustomed to seeing.
We also aren't accustomed to the economy being shut down. We have to keep in mind that there are more poor whites in the country than there are poor blacks or any other demographic, because by number there's just more of them. So I think that you got to be careful with the construction of narrative when you talk about the co-opting of causes, because just because all these people are coalescing together at the same time does not necessarily mean that they are fighting to the same cause or to the same end. And what I'm talking about, and Mike, you actually brought up a very interesting point, which is that, it starts at legislation and we have to trust history. Fine. Well, history has showed us that the people who write legislation look exactly like the people who are oppressors. And we've also found that the same people that write the legislation have to evolve to a certain place of social consciousness to where they realize that I'm not 3/5 a man, to where they realize that, oh yeah, I need to actually have voting rights, to realize that like my voice is equally as valuable as the next person, color, creed, religion, whatever. So for me, when you talk about systemic reformation, let's say like at the legislative level, I would feel a lot better if I saw more people that look like me, but, and Mac, and all the beautiful brothers and sisters out here. I would love to see more of those people writing legislation on behalf of, our people. And until that changes,
I would nominate Nicole before me though.
Look, we got to find the best candidate.
Right.
That never in the history of America have we seen a reflection.
I messed that thing up, man.
A representation of ourselves in the legislative bodies and in the governing bodies. That's why it's so important to get out and vote. Like, know who your judges are. Okay, know who you're like. All of your congressional leaders. Like, we need to take greater ownership of our agency as a people and our voice and our power to vote. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to get on the voting bandwagon, but I'm like, well, shit. If we're in the system and we can play, we might as well. We might as well flex.
I also think we also got to remember to that often you can have a black man in the highest position in the land, and still not see change.
Yeah, but who?
Wait. But can I speak to that just for 1 second? Because I think we do, like you said earlier. I think you said earlier they highly disrespected him when he was President Obama,
right,
and stuff like that. But I think what happened was we showed power in numbers in the black community for the first time, and I do mark what I'm saying, the first time is when he was the president for both of those terms. But I think we showed it the second time when Trump got in office, because we did not
vote.
We did not go vote, right?
Yep.
So, but here's a lesson that I'm learning in all of this, in all of those two things that have happened, because it's only been almost 4 years that Trump's been in office, and it feels like 10, but at the end of the day, what I do understand is that as a black race, we were all excited that we had a guy in office, right? But we had a guy in the White House. But my friend Sean Martin, one of my best friends in the world, he made a statement one time. He was like, "But we didn't worry about the guy next door. We wasn't worried about, and the guy next door is like, so even if we vote Trump out of office right now, he's already set up his clan and all of the judges. They're gonna do all of the right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I mean, and we start with the judges, and we can keep going down to our local officials. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? And I think
local oppressors.
The local oppressors. So at the end of the day, I really feel like that's a part of it. That is, but I'm also looking, and social media right now is playing the worst role at the same time, because it's the way we get information out to one another. But you have these entities and these agendas that are coming in. Just let's take yesterday. Yesterday was supposed to be a positive situation, right? How did it get turned around? It was supposed to be a positive situation. And from my standpoint, this is what I was telling all of the people that really have been following and trying to do the best they can to help, was that yesterday was Blackout Tuesday, right? Buy black, support black, merchandise, buy black. But at the same time, on the East Coast in Delaware and where all of these states, there was voting. So you guys go do the research and vote. Somebody wanted to just make this a black square, but we not say nothing. So information wasn't getting out on election day.
That's strategy, man. That's
so listen to what I'm saying. Like, we're fighting against a lot right now. We're fighting against a lot as black people. We're fighting against a lot. We're fighting against that kind of shit, which is not cool. Because we're on this panel. Everybody is saying voting is the first step, right? Everybody is saying that, but then there's these agendas coming against that one thing. And then number two, let's talk about the protests and let's talk about the riots. All right, what I don't like is hearing looting and rioting ain't the way. I don't like hearing that, because it does dismiss a lot of things when you say that. Because we've been peaceful, like I said, my family been peaceful protesting since the 20s. All right, we've been doing this, and up until now, you couldn't do anything but peaceful protests because they was gonna wear your ass out.
Chicago Chicago got burned. There's a lot of history of violent protests.
Well, they was dogs that they were gonna wear your ass out if you wasn't doing anything other than peaceful protesting anyway. So now, no one's getting killed. Somebody might get a cut or a wound and get their feelings hurt, but no one's getting killed when someone walks in the store and throws a brick in the window. By the way, bricks being laid out on the side of the street, in a wall of bricks being laid out on the side of the street.
When you first told me that, I didn't believe you, Spud, but then I confirmed with other people in tons of cities around the U.S. that is actually an organized effort where pallets of plastic-wrapped bricks are being laid out by U-Haul trucks during the day and covered up.
Instigators of the vulnerable and hurt people, and throwing something, just igniting a fire that's waiting to reload. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, right. So at the end of the day, like, you have that. Black folks are fighting against that. These two things that I just mentioned. And then you have, and the reason why I don't like we shouldn't loot, because at the end of the day, like, when when you know and you see the examples of it was 6 police that started the looting and the riots. It was 6 police in Minneapolis. They were caught on camera. They were the only ones that had on this full garb of mask and everything. And when they got confronted, the police officer was like, "Don't come close to me, I will whoop your ass." He basically told the guy that, and because he called him out, he was like, "Wait, what are you doing? Why did you do that?" You know, and it was a sense of awakeness and awareness in the community. It's like somebody slapping you out of your craziness, like, yo, wake up. And
there's a narrative being shared today, which is an innocent black man was murdered, but there's no excuse for looting, rioting, and pillaging. When the narrative should actually be there's looting, rioting, and pillaging, but an innocent black man was killed. That should never happen to an American citizen. See what I'm saying? We're putting a value on the economic situation over the humanity situation.
Well, and
that's part of the
why
conversation.
also
I don't like the
people.
I don't like the looting and rioting is being called violent though.
Yeah, it's not violent. It's about economics.
It's destructive, but non-violent.
It's destructive.
Not violent.
Yeah. But also, like what happens, there's different people smashing. There's different people looting for different reasons. Some for chaos, some for protest, and some people want some shit. You see every, you know what I'm saying? Because what are the conditions out here? What do you expect when communities have been robbed and stolen from? What do you expect when people ain't got no money, ain't got no jobs, So there's multiple people doing different destruction, and saying, just calling out the looting, and it's basically calling people, just trying to call people animals.
It's dismissive.
Well, I mean, but it's more of the same. And, to that point, peaceful protests and all that is great, but I've never seen, at least to my knowledge, any example of true
revolution. Not in America.
Without bloodshed.
The hypocrisy is that people are calling for peaceful protests, but when Kaepernick took a knee, he was the most hated person in America. What's more peaceful than that?
The NFL was too large of a platform for a message like that. Do that in your own backyard. Don't do it in front of our millions and millions and millions of viewers.
Don't fuck with our dollar.
Right.
I thought you wanted peaceful protest. I thought you wanted peaceful protest. You got it.
Well, they you know what? They want us to be good niggas. That's what they want us to do. They want us to be
different from peaceful protest.
That's what they. I'm tired of tiptoeing and dancing around and shit.
They want you to be mad grateful.
They want you to be a good nigga. And you know what? Kendrick Lamar's album, To Pimp a Butterfly, honestly, it illustrates so many. It just illustrates so many things that have been historically true and are also presently true of the Black experience. It's
he spoke to everybody.
He spoke to everybody.
I was blessed to be a part of that project, and I think the one thing that I took from that whole thing is how he talked. It's just kind of like parallel to what Dave Chappelle does. He gets everybody, and he tells the side. So you might be laughing about that, then he gets your ass next. But at the end of the day, it's like everyone learned, but a record like that came and went. I think a lot of people got it. I think it should have started the conversation because that record spearheaded the whole Colin Kaepernick movement, right? That record comes, Colin Kaepernick comes, and then no one brought those two. No one really, like that. I mean, like I feel
they tried to compartmentalize it instead of creating the narrative. Continuum. A very specific movement and a climate in our culture right now,
So speaking,
but Mike, what would you were going to say something? I cut you off. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something.
We're talking about the Colin Kaepernick thing, and I think it's you also have to, why was he so hated? Because the NFL, the fan base, the people that are watching the NFL on Sundays there's a lot of conservative people that watch that. Had it been a musician, had it been Beyonce taking a knee at a gig, or somebody like that, I think the response would have been very different because you have a more liberal audience. But I mean,
Do you guys know that Colin Kaepernick's Take a Knee protest was instigated by an Army Ranger on his team? You know that when Colin Kaepernick started,
absolutely.
The anthem has nothing to do with me. That's not what I'm paid for. I'm going to get ready for this game. So he just went about his business, getting ready for the game. A Ranger came over to him on his team, one of his teammates, and said, "Hey man, I noticed when the anthem is up, you're always just doing your own thing. You're not paying no attention to the anthem." I'm like, "What's up with that?" He's like, "Well, this country doesn't respect black people, so I'm not respecting the anthem right now." He said, "Well, listen, that's offensive to me because I'm a Ranger. And what we do when one of ours is fallen is we take a knee." He said, "Oh, does that really offend you?" "Yes, it does." "Okay, you're my teammate and I respect you. I'll go ahead and take a knee during the anthem then." For an Army Ranger on his team, that became the most hated act in the last decade in America.
Well, the fact that he kept on doing it, that was what was empowering. Because in the face of that criticism, he continued, and I think that's the thing is,
he kneeled his way out the league.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It can't be just a moment. Like, what are we going to do in this moment for change? But it's like, how do we sustain, protest? Whether that's people in the street or whatever. How do we sustain a movement?
It's all a matter of degree and perspective. I'm sure there's a lot of white folks that were angry as hell about Kaepernick who are watching America today who are like, let him play, damn it.
Right.
Let him play, it's okay.
I think a lot of what we've been talking about is the power of narrative, right? The power of story and identity and all this kind of stuff. And the thing that was that I made Kaepernick hated so much is if that would have, the story that you just told, Arturo, if that would have been the first thing that hit the media, I think the response would have been very different. But immediately, everybody started saying he's doing it because he doesn't respect our military, our armed forces who die for the U.S. He doesn't, and that was the message that went out to conservative America.
Doing exactly
but hold on, I got an issue with that too, because when you had vets, you had military, you had everybody coming out and said, no, we fought for the right for him to do that, and everybody ignored him. Everybody ignored him. Then it became a whole divisive thing.
Have a black man be stronger than a corporate structure. I think that's really the issue here. It's the posture. It's scary to who though? It's empowering for my sons to see it.
Yeah, no, it's scary to the owner.
We can't have one black man be more powerful than the league.
Of course,
it's subversive, and it's subversive.
The nature of that influence could completely alter our business model. It could completely alter the lens with which we are perceived, and everything is about damage control. You understand?
I'm so glad you mentioned.
When it comes,
I'm so glad you mentioned the business model. I'm so glad you mentioned the business model because, so two things. First of all, obviously you guys hit on the freedom of expression, right? Fundamental principle of America. So he should have been lauded for being able to express himself. But number two, man, the anthem at the game is not a fundamental part of football. Matter of fact, it started in the late 80s as a recruitment tool to recruit more people into the armed forces. Hey, why don't we have a ceremony before the game? Why don't we have the anthem? Why don't we have people stand up? All that was invented, a marketing ploy to get people to sign up for the armed forces. So it's not a fundamental part of the game. It was business. How do we drive more recruitment to the armed forces? That's how it started.
The auction block is business. Congo Square, you know what I'm saying? But to the same point, like the way that they have the combine set up, well, he can jump really high and let's, measure his, it's like, it's modern day slavery with a paycheck, it's like, well, I'm gonna pit my best black bucks against your best black bucks, and we're gonna see what happens. It's like it's the most disgusting display of something that has been going on for hundreds of years. Okay, we're talking about the first slaves coming here around 1619, so about 400 years ago, right? All the way up to 2020, we're still talking about the same stuff. I think.
Sorry, go on.
Huh?
No, go ahead. Finish your idea.
Just to sum it all up, I think that all of these instances and personal accounts are fantastic, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about it. But I really want to get to the heart of what are we doing to affect change in a tangible and actionable way? Because I'm about that action. I'm not about reliving the atrocities of the past. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to move forward. Like, my time here might be short. Brothers, our time here might be short. Sister, our time here might be short. But if we can do something actionable now to affect change in a positive way for our futures, for our generations. That is all I care about. I don't care nothing about, like, this ain't about me. It's not about my career. It's not like I have my shot. It's about our sons, our daughters, our grandchildren, our generations, man. Because unfortunately, when I talk to my grandma who's from Mississippi and marched all throughout the 60s, had sit-ins, was hosed out, like all the experiences that you see in the textbook, my grandma has lived it. And I talked to her this morning. I said, I'm getting ready to do a panel discussion. She was like, what are you doing that for? We did that already. I got great-grandchildren, and I'm sitting here looking like, well, what was the point of protesting? What was the point of it all? I think that we have to get to a point of action. And if that comes in the form of riots and looting, I think that's a good start. It's a start. It's a start to wake people up to realize that enough is enough. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time it's happened. Unfortunately, it will not be the last time. Okay?
But it's just protest, and it's also just protest until somebody loots or burns some shit down. Then all of a sudden, you get attention, you get a response in some kind of way.
Well, they arrested. They didn't make any moves on arresting anybody until it started to escalate. And that really, I think it says a lot,
Right.
They had a small police army protecting this man at his house.
They arrested 700 people in New York last night to keep from arresting 3 in Minnesota. Arrested 3 dudes. What are we talking about?
That's why.
You want to arrest American citizens en masse for protesting when you could just arrest the police officers who broke the law because no one is above the law? I mean, how much more complicated?
Well, and they're scared because of the symbolism. Because once you start arresting 4 cops for this, so many others who already have blood on their hands, or might be in the same position now, have something to fear, and they might think twice about how they operate. I saw one police chief talking about going on about, he's like, I've had, 3 under my belt, but I don't, they haven't had to come to accountability for this, and the action threatens all of them.
I want to ask everybody, go on ahead.
No, they should think twice about it. I have a friend who's been on the force for 27 years, has never drawn his weapon in northern New Jersey. Not because it's mad safe. He's been undercover. He's been undercover narcotics. He's been sex trafficking detail. He's never pulled his weapon on anybody. That's 27 years. They should think twice about it. They should go into every situation thinking twice about keeping their job or being locked up in jail for their actions.
I have a question for everybody. When we think about solutions, the things that we can do, power with our voice, power with our relationships, our resources, what are some of the ways in which we can positively affect change and shift this systemic oppressive paradigm, right, so that it doesn't affect the next generation? Like, are we thinking about that, or are we so traumatized by the moment that we're impaired to actually see beyond our trauma and really start thinking of a framework that we can construct? Maybe it's compartmentalized to what we do as musicians, but maybe we can start thinking about things that we want to see happen legislatively. Like, have we put any thought into what our demands are? Like, what do we want? What would you guys like to see happen?
Can I just shortly comment on that question, Deshaun? Because I'm based in Holland, so from Europe, so I get I'm seeing what is happening from America from a little bit outside, from an outside perspective.
Sure.
And I had a discussion with a friend last night, just comparing, like we did earlier in the conversation, like you have the Martin Luther King movement, you had Malcolm X, and now we have the Black Lives Matter movement. So where does that stand, and how organized is that? And can it be organized to a certain extent that it can reach representation politically, but also in the business world somehow? That's just a question.
Well, that statement gets dismissed with all lives matter, which is, it's got to stop. Because, I mean, if I got 4 kids, if we're walking on the street and one of my kids take off running and I go off running after them, how much sense does it make for them? Does it make for them to be, Dad, what about us? And we're all walking in the same direction. It's like, so at the end of the day, I think I think like, and people have had so many like metaphors for this whole thing. But you can't like Black Lives Matter can't be organized if we get dismissed every time the statement is mentioned. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, we need a united front on Black Lives Matter. We need everybody to say that. We need everybody to be comfortable saying this. We don't need people to be offended by this statement because it's important. That's the first thing we need everybody to say. And I think the second thing is what Deshaun alluded to. It's education, dialogue, but I think Mike or whoever said it, it's the kids. Like, we have to start raising the kids. I mean, our black kids are raised, we don't teach them about the oppression that they have on them.
That's true. That's true.
We don't teach them about the oppression that's on them because it's difficult. Because you know why? Because I am a middle class black man, and unfortunately fortunately my move is different than my first cousin's move. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been able to make a living playing music using my gift to suffice for me. You know, my cousins don't have that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so my kids get to go to school with white people, white kids. They get to have, they get to have that interaction with white, so they don't see color. They just see friends. They see playtime with friends. So I think
all kids need that opportunity. There shouldn't be such a disparity between what the kids have available. And that is that is one of the major problems we face, is the disparity of resources available to different people, and how most of the resources are held by a very small majority.
Yeah, but they also confused now though. You know what I'm saying? Like, they grew up with these, but they also confused now. So I think the second thing is really like white America not shielding or not feel. I mean, like, we did the thing with Black history. We took over Black history as Black people when we're changing the story and making sure that the truth is being told about. Because in school, I mean, the Black history classes I took in school was bullshit. It was not true. Yeah, it was not true. And so now I think I think all of us, we've come to the conclusion that we have to teach this ourselves in order for the truth to be out. But I think at the same time, I think the white people have to do that too in their households. And I think that is a part of it too. When you say future, because these are the future bigots. These are the future racist people. If this is being taught by people, you hear Lewis say this. He said that I was taught to be racist, and I had to peel that off. And I mean, like, how many of these people are like this out here?
Mm-hmm. More people, and that's covert racist out here. They don't even know. They don't even know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, funding is more than you realize it too. So.
Yeah, that kind of. We got to conclude pretty soon. By the way, I know I've kept you guys for 45 minutes longer than I promised. I'm sorry, but I just don't want to interrupt.
Great conversation, Greg.
Good.
It's great. It's great conversation, and it's really important. And I want to give everybody the chance to have some closing remarks. But on that note, that is one of my my main motivations, is because I think that one of the biggest problems is people is I don't even know, maybe you guys know exactly what the term is. I don't know if it's covert racism, but it's racism that people don't even realize they have. And the only way to spot it in yourself is dialoguing with other people about it and hearing the stories of people that you respect, like Sput, all these kids who are fans of you, young drummers, hearing the stories of what you have gone through yourself, so they can realize what a problem this actually is. Because there are still the biggest problem that I see, whether it's in our government or whether it's in people, is people who don't quite understand the gravity of what actually exists and what people are going through. So these dialogues are one of the ways that we can support that understanding.
Yeah.
Do we? So one of the audience questions was, what can we in the music industry do? And we sort of answered that with some of these last comments. But if anybody has any final thoughts on anything, but also on actionable items that we as artists, and so many people who are watching are artists because of the channels that we're on, what we can do to support the movement to spot and extricate systemic racism from our system and from our platform, so that we can move towards a better future. Does anybody?
Yeah,
please.
I'll go first because I got to get out of here. But one thing I want to do first is apologize. I might be long-winded because I have to be careful. I have to be very conscious of how I articulate. Because I'm not an activist. I'm not a political speaker or anything like that. So I apologize if it was long-winded, but I hope you guys actually heard my heart and heard where, I hope I made it clear where I stand and how willing I am to try to come up with this change. But I think in closing, I think if we use our platform as musicians and artists, I think if we start changing the way we use our platform, like as a collective, to share and educate and do things through our music, not just through social media, but when we get on that stage, because that's a larger audience that you can face to face look at and sense the energy of whenever that time comes, obviously. If we could start using our art that way, I think that's a way we can contribute as musicians and artists. Other than that, it's get inside your local community, grassroots efforts in this, and stop just depending on social media. Stop just depending on, because I just said earlier that all of these other entities and all of these other agendas are kind of infusing themselves with the positive and the right move. So get into the grassroots, because you all know exactly what the move is, and and people will have those conversations that are having those collective conversations, can share them with you immediately, directly. So I thank y'all for having me on this panel.
Nicole has to go and give the world some beautiful music, so why don't we let her go?
Oh, Nicole, sorry, if you've been sending messages, I haven't seen them. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us here. Your input was invaluable.
No problem. My pleasure. Goodness, I feel, earlier today in the meeting, I was talking about how the music we play, we need to play more of message music, and that's just what I call it. Just the music that speaks to people in these times. So it's something that I'm hoping that we'll do more of at WBGO, as opposed to being afraid of certain messages coming through the music. But for me, change is gonna come from the start of change, because as Deshaun said, I don't know when it's gonna really be a full change, but I think the start comes in the truthful conversations. And there's certain parties that have got to just listen and respect everybody's experience for what it is, their experience. So if you hear someone talk about getting pulled over by the cops, all the time, don't brush that off. Like, really listen to that experience, listen to that story, and talk to people that don't look like you, get to know people. It's not enough to say my neighbor is Black. Really have conversations with Black people. If you're, really have conversations with, I'm not going to say people of color, I'm going to say with Black people. And I think that's going to help get things started, is the honest conversations. Communication, I think has been a running theme this afternoon. So thank you, Greg, Greg, I'm kind of mad I didn't, set this off. But I thank you. Look, I'm home all day. What am I, but I thank you so much for thinking about this enough to reach out to all of us to have the conversations, because it has to be had continuously.
Well,
so thank you.
Support
to meet all of you guys.
Pleasure.
Who I haven't met. And I'm going to go play some music for the people, because this is like the little piece of healing that they get through these hard times is through the music. So
Thank you for using your platform.
Yeah, thank you for everything you do, Nicole.
Oh, of course. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, guys.
All right.
See you later.
Bye. Anybody else have thoughts that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to use our platform, just like, you know, kind of everybody's saying, because we do have a megaphone, you know, and we have a lot of people who we were able to reach and being able to bring the message to the world. You know, I often, you know, think that people look towards music and arts, you know, for leadership and cultural leadership, particularly when our actual political leaders and people are failing to give us any hope or any direction. And so that's a really powerful, you know, power to wield. And so, and directly dealing with our communities, local and international, you know, to talk with people and, you know, do the most we can and put your money where your mouth is, you know, put your money where your mouth is, you know, and if that means, you know, donate, don't try to capitalize on things that you don't need to capitalize. If you know, you be fair. If you want the world to be fair, then you need to be fair. And so, you know, those are things that, you know, are in direct reach. You know, and so, you know, that's where I start. You know, make sure you get out a vote, use your voice, you know, and stand. You know, speak truth to power. Because, you know, in the end, I think, you know, I want my my politics to make my identity and not my identity make my politics.
Thank you, Micaiah. And thank you for joining us on this. This is, I know you've been kind of laying low a little bit on social media for a long time, and you came out with a few posts in this past week, but for you to come out and dialogue with us live here, it's very meaningful to me, and I know it's also very meaningful to the community. So thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you, Greg.
And you're smart. That's another thing. It's like your ideas are always enlightening when we have these conversations, so I'm really glad that the public could hear it too. Arturo, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just think any answer is going to rely on us, we, you know, we, not I, but we. So this idea of collective, of having conversations like these, of really listening to and understanding people, super important. I think, you know, you can't diminish the importance of voting, super, super critical. And then everybody has to take personal responsibility. If there's something that you don't know enough about, go out and find out about it. There's too many resources on the web to give you knowledge about whatever you could possibly think of under the sun. Get yourself immersed and educated. I think you have a responsibility to yourself, to your children, to your community, to get versed about what's going on in the world and to try to shed a positive light, you know, and some solution-oriented thinking on what's happening. So I think those are the three really important and critical platforms. And again, I want to thank you and show my appreciation for you bringing this group of people together, for having this important and powerful conversation.
Well, Arturo, your thoughts have been invaluable to this conversation, and they're always like my conversations with Micaiah. Every time I talk with you, I learn something new, and it's always very enlightening. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Anybody who hasn't spoken have any final thoughts?
I'll jump in. For the white people out there, you know, I think that you know, there's some short-term things that we can do and some long-term things. The short-term things are the things that have been stated a bunch. We need to do our research on our political options. We need to actively vote about people that will represent the ideals that we believe in. We need to donate. You know, these are things you can do tomorrow. Register, vote, donate. It's like, you can knock these out. These are the not painful things, not taxing, not time-consuming things, but very important, and they play their own small role in chipping away at the thing. you know, the long-term stuff is the stuff that we've been talking about recognizing that there is a thing that you might not have been aware of that is around you, whether you knew it and didn't do anything about it, or whether you genuinely didn't know. Now just know about it, find out about it, research it, check it out, and recognize that it will be painful, that you're going to feel like shit about yourself, you're going to have deep regrets, and that's a part of the process. I almost think about it like practicing. You know, when I practice, every time I realize, like, oh, I can't do that, I feel like shit, I feel like a bad musician. And instead of saying, oh, well, let me just focus on the stuff that I can do, you slow the thing down and you work on it until you can do it. And not to say that that's in any way comparable in terms of, like, you know, emotional content as this thing. It's a thing that, like, white people have to be comfortable with being very, very uncomfortable, and being aware that even though you, as your identity, like, I was raised a certain way and I've always thought of myself to be this way, non-racist, you know, blah, 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 that actually, like, I need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, that I didn't do enough, that I haven't done enough, that I'm not the person that I thought I was, and to do everything I can to find the information, have the conversations that will build me into the person that I want to be. And that takes longer, but I'm actually encouraged just by the amount of people that I've been speaking with this week that have been kind of having those realizations. And it's late. It's too late. It's late, but it's not too late. It's never too late. I think it's a thing that any big change in the society happens as the result of a lot of people doing little to big things, and it has to be a big wave, and we all have to do our thing in it, and understand that we're talking to people that have a very, very, like, on a spectrum of awareness, and that we need to bring as many people with us as we can. Mm-hmm. That would be what I'd say.
Well, thank you, Mike. And I know that your music and your presence is inspiring to a lot of people, and your words will be encouraging and enlightening. Your being on this panel means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the other panelists and to the community. So thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you. I learned a lot. Thank you.
I did too. Who hasn't said anything yet? Anybody else who hasn't taken the floor for the end want to give a final note?
I'll just jump in and I'll leave the last word for Deshaun. I mean, everything has been said. Just don't lose hope. You know, hope is the foundation of the power of now. And whatever happens, whatever you guys do over there in the States, I mean, politically, it's a real, like you said, Greg, I mean, I've been following American politics since ever, very closely, writing about it and whatever not. But the speech Trump gave a couple of nights ago was actually very bone-chilling. I mean, I just caught it by surprise, and it actually gave me goosebumps. So please be careful, but do not lose hope, because with hope there is change. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, we've had countless conversations overseas, and it's really I'm really happy that we're able to bring your voice now to this platform. So thank you so much for joining us. The conversation has been inspiring and enlightening.
Thank you.
Deshaun, did you have any final words you wanted to say before we close out here?
Everybody that was a part of this panel, this discussion, I think it was a very beautiful thing to happen. I think it was a very brave effort on Greg's part to actually facilitate it. And I sincerely appreciate everybody's voice and perspective that's been a part of this conversation, because I think that the problem that we're faced with as a society is multifarious, in that it depends on the lens with which you view the problem. Everybody here is seeing it from a different aspect. So I'm going to be alienated from the perspective of other people, and likewise. So I think these sort of conversations and open discourse are critical to bring about change and to heighten a greater level of awareness throughout the social consciousness, if we're actually going to move towards change. What I will speak to in terms of, you know, what is our responsibility as musicians, as artists, as human beings, I take the personal perspective that music is not the answer, but it's a part of the solution. Our art is not the answer, but it's a part of the solution. And I think that we have a very powerful tool at our disposal to be like Micaiah said, a megaphone to champion the remedies to the problem, or to decry the problem, you know. And I think the more that we kind of ascertain how we can do that as a collective, as one voice, as one sound, to yo, this president is a POS, or the way that things are happening with Black people in Black communities with the police is wrong. Like, we all come together and coalesce under like one message. I think that will be powerful. I really do believe that beyond the music, this is indeed time for action. And to my people and to my generations that are coming after us, we need to start with our education. We need to be well educated in the history of ourselves and the history of those that have been our oppressors for centuries. We need to understand the tactics of war, and anybody that doesn't see this as a form of warfare is sadly mistaken. We need to be prepared, stay ready, so you don't have to get ready, prepare for war in a time of peace, and ultimately make sure that whatever we do, it's not something that's going to be temporary but long lasting, because it's got to be about the future, like on both sides, how our children interact with one another, how they view each other, and get rid of this inferiority and superiority complex within society just based off of the color of your skin. I think that's ridiculous. So I think we should be championing those causes through our music for sure. Much love and respect to everybody that's been a part of this. I'm humbled to have been a part myself, and thank you, man.
Well, thank you, Deshaun. You're actually one of the people who inspired me to do this in the first place. It was me asking you what I can do, and you saying, "Well, use your platform." So thank you for inspiring me to put this together. Thank you for your voice in our conversations are always enlightening to me. Thank you for being a part of this.
No doubt, man. No doubt. We're in this together.
Yes.
Even though we might be on other sides of this shit, we're still in it together.
Well,
and we gotta figure it out.
We're all in this together. All right, guys. To everybody on the panel, thank you so much for joining us today. I could literally talk about this all day, and I think that we've come to some at the very least, we've come to some very enlightening pieces of information and viewpoints, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. It will live up on the internet for indefinitely. So everybody who is watching this, please share this and share the message, and keep the dialogue going. So thank you everybody.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you, everyone. Greg, thank you.
See you guys later.
Thanks, Greg. Peace. All.
Whew. All right, everybody. I'm going to switch back to my screen over here. The only me screen. Thank you guys for watching this today. This has been a very enlightening and inspiring panel for me. It's a very hard time for everybody. And I think the dialogues that come from this challenging moment in history will help us to avoid repeating histories that we have so long repeated. Some resources are in the chat here. I sent them as texts. I would just encourage everybody to please share this video, and if you have a platform, use it. Have dialogues with people. Ask people, what can I do, if you don't know what to do, but there are some obvious ones. Spread the message, vote, and a lot of things I'm going to go back and revisit from these conversations today. Man, I'm going to end this with I'm going to end with a little music. Music has always been a healing thing for me. And I'm feeling some sort of way right now, so I want to express that before we end. And finally, to close, we're going to hear a song that we released today from Spirit Fingers and Judy Jackson, an incredible singer who's living in London but is actually from the US. This song is called Lest We Forget. This song is dedicated to the memory of George Floyd and all of the African American people who've lost their lives at the hands of the people who are meant to serve and protect. I don't know if this is actually the key that it's in that I'm giving the intro for, but we'll see. Please enjoy. This is out today. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere. Thank you, everybody. We'll have another episode on Saturday with Lenny White and some others, but I don't have the list in front of me. I think Jonathan Blake. I can't remember who all's on it, but amazing drummers celebrating the life of Jimmy Cobb. Enjoy Lest We Forget. See you Saturday. Thank you very much.
We began to connect, to reflect. Dim silence. Said lest we forget who we are. And I just wanna feel where your heart is. I just wanna feel where your heart is. Be vulnerable to truth. Be vulnerable to change, 'cause nothing stays the same when your mind is in a frame of growth. Say lest we forget. Say lest we forget. Say lest we forget who we are. The moments of silence we find peace, joy, light, understanding, and a space of finding who it is we really are. But were we ever anything to begin with? Are you really trying to hear me? Are you listening? Don't listen. My advice is to not listen. Don't listen to a word they say. You just up and walk away. Don't listen. Don't listen. Hold on to your pride and faith. You just up and walk away. Don't listen, no. Don't listen. 'Cause there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of information surrounding your decisions, so only you can decide what's wrong and right. Say less, lest we forget. Say less we forget. Say less we forget who we are. Say less we forget. Say less we forget. Say less we forget who we are.